use?
It's a link. The link in the email.
Okay.
We have established a
Okay.
Everybody started.
It's 7:13. We should start the countdown 2-minute video.
We have started the webinar, Dr. Sunny. Just hold on. I think I'll play the PowerPoint. Dr. Sunny, all yours. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning to our viewers in the Bay Area, across the US and South America. A very good afternoon to those in Europe and Africa. And good evening to our viewers from India, South Pacific, Asia, other Pacific nations. I'm very pleased to welcome you to the last of our 3 series of webinars for the 5th Annual Ideal Village Conference at Stanford. My name is Sunny Anand, and I'm a professor of pediatrics at Stanford University School of Medicine. And with Dr. Sundar Kamath from Sanmina Corp, I'm the co-chair for the Ideal Village Conference. This is a coalition of the willing, a partnership between Stanford University and Science for Society. And you can get additional information about this conference from our website displayed on your screen. A brief word about previous Ideal Village conferences at Stanford. We started in 2016 with the theme of innovations for the Ideal Village. And then the following year, collaborations for the Ideal Village, realizing that no one entity can do it on its own. The third one was on empowerment of women, particularly in rural and underserved areas. And then last year, we had this conference focused on the theme of corporate social responsibility. This was a very successful conference last year, which attracted 245 registrants and 58 walk-ins. As you can see, the hall was packed. So I just briefly want to cover the brief takeaways from the previous sessions that have occurred. From healthcare and nutrition on the 13th, we learned that science must drive policy and personal decision-making, that collaboration and solidarity is key to overcome this pandemic, that the Sustainable Development Goals were set back by 25 years in these 25 weeks, and that health and nutrition for women, the elderly and disabled are most significant, most important. From the session on values-based education, we learned that free education capitalizes on the goodness in people, creates a powerful alignment to core human values, that education should not lead to debt, it should lead to gratitude and a life of service, that children with deafness, blindness, and other disabilities must not be left behind. We must take special care for those populations, and to teach leadership skills and support for parents as teachers is critically important. From the session yesterday on sustainable livelihoods, we learned about the importance of South-South cooperation, of triangulation within developing nations. The private-public partnerships are key for rural development, to empower and involve all the villagers, building their skills and confidence, to create finance models through granting mechanisms or returnable grants which can be paid forward, or loans, particularly focusing on women. And that entrepreneurship can thrive through cooperation and empowerment. And finally, from the session on clean energy and water, our key takeaways were: energy is the source for rural development in all areas, that the pandemic has created prospects for a sustainable and clean planet, that reliable, multi-source, clean, cheap energy integrated is really important, and energy must have a global equity, national equity, and societal equity to empower everyone to function. That there are innovative ways for clean water, sanitation, biofuel, and human compost. And now we come to the last day, our special session on eternal values for sustainability. What will be the key takeaways over here? We must come to this with an open mind. Before we get started, I just want to mention some housekeeping issues. First, a disclaimer that the views presented by the speakers in these webinars are their own. They do not reflect and are not endorsed by the Ideal Village program or Stanford University or Science for Society or any of our partners. For housekeeping issues, all attendees will be on mute throughout the webinar. Please use the Q&A tab in Zoom to type in your questions for the speakers, and the chat box to share your comments, thoughts, and feedback. For Q&A, participants must register for the Zoom webinar. It's not available on Facebook Live. So without further ado, I will hand over to Dr. Sundar Kamath, who is the co-chair for this conference.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. Just getting this back in order here. Okay, you've seen the whole presentation now. Here we go. So I'm going to give you a little update on the Ideal Village project. As you can imagine, this involves a lot of partner organizations, NGOs, volunteers, and a big thank you to all of them for being involved, for taking this forward. All right, some problem here. Spacebar is not working on this. All right, so quickly, Ideal Village is a concept where we make sure that the rural underserved communities have the essential needs in water, healthcare, education, energy, livelihood, sanitation. The technologies we use must be affordable, must be cost effective, and give due consideration to eco-sustainability and self-reliance. And we need CSR partners who can take this forward along with the nonprofits and governmental agencies. Ultimately, the goal of this is elimination of rural poverty and urban migration, better health and life for all. There are two key elements of this concept. On the left-hand side, what we are showing is a holistic approach. Clean water, health, nutrition, education, energy, housing, sanitation, livelihoods, entrepreneurship, human values, and having a community in the village is extremely important. All of this comes under the umbrella of sustainability. And this is what will enable the rural economy and take millions and millions out of poverty. Along with holistic solutions, we also need collaboration because no one foundation or agency or government can do it all. And the fundamental basis for collaboration is that we must have the local stakeholders, the villages, the leaders of the community involved. We have government agencies with the policies and support. We have nonprofits who are doing a lot of the work in different areas. We have tech companies who can bring a lot of value. For example, the innovation that happens in Silicon Valley and elsewhere that comes into play. And then the academic institutions where there's a lot of research and innovation and young resources who can work on this with the villagers. Then finally, we have the corporate social responsibility, corporate. So this is the true collaboration that I'm talking about. This needs to happen. So holistic and collaboration are the two key pillars of this project. Now, we have chosen to work with Stanford as the collaboration platform. And we've had these conferences annually, bringing together all the different entities. As you can see, both on the corporate side and the foundation side, we've had some very good participation, about 60 plus organizations in these last 4 years. And this is, of course, key as far as getting these entities to work together. Also, as a result of this, we managed to develop a database of solutions, different solutions for the different issues. And this is a live database that will keep building up. It will be open source, available to communities that wish to explore certain types of solutions for their unique needs. Let me touch quickly on healthcare and nutrition. There's been a big focus on screening of rural children, women, and seniors in the village, holding camps for diabetes and hypertension, a breakfast program that covers children who have to attend government schools, a nutrition program for them, micronutrients, proteins, which is very important for cognitive development of these young children. And then health screening of expectant mothers and children in rural areas as well. And of course, with the COVID, telemedicine is becoming extremely important. So we're launching some new programs in that area. And then finally, helping children who have congenital heart defects in rural areas, providing them free surgeries. So as you can see the numbers on the slide and several organizations working together, this is what makes it successful. And one example that's happening in Tamil Nadu is the Sri Sai Healing Trust is working with the government in a private public partnership, working with the central government, the state government, eventually as part of the National Health Mission to launch a focus on children and women's health, which will cover the entire state. And as on the right, we see some numbers that will eventually, we are starting with 5 districts covering 2,000, almost 3,000 schools and 500,000 children, and this will then grow. So collaboration is the key word here again. On the Ideal Village side, we'll share with you quickly about some of the pilots. Here are some examples of 6 villages in 3 states of India, populations of those villages between a few hundred to 1,000, 5,000, and sponsored by 3 different companies here. And when we start these projects, we first of all do a survey and understand the demographics and what's available in the village, and then systematically build the program out. Some examples of the work that's been happening in these villages includes health screening, hygiene, drinking water, sanitation, building new school toilets, building new playgrounds, building better facilities, providing mobile healthcare through these delivery systems, which are, for example, a medical bus, which is fully equipped as a clinic and gives access to these villages. The key word here is access. Just like we saw with energy yesterday, healthcare is the same, education is the same. We have to provide access in an affordable manner. We also track the progress of these villages in the different areas like preventive healthcare, food, nutrition, clean water, and obviously one of these villages is way ahead. It's almost getting to the final state, but there are different stages of development. Now, key to success, what we found is that there's a few fundamental requirements. The organization that works in the village has to know its village. It has to know the people, has to know everything about that village. The work has to be done with a regular cadence so that there is consistency, there's visibility, and there is dependability in terms of implementing the project. Buy-in from the village elders, the community leaders is extremely important. Just as important is the involvement of the village residents. And ultimately, all of this happens no matter how much money or technology you pump in. It's the people that make it happen. So the people power is extremely important. And we've got an action plan to try and get to 1,000 ideal villages by 2025, working with companies, NGOs, and others. And we invite all of you to participate in this so that we can make this successful. Recently, the OECD has put out a Rural 3.0 people-centered policy, which talks about technology, 10 areas of technology innovation that can be implemented to really make an impact in rural development. I won't go through these, I just want to draw your attention. But what we also need to keep in mind is that sustainability is extremely important. We have to be very careful about taking urban development projects and then just replicating those in the rural settings. The unintended consequences of doing so can be extremely bad. And as you've seen, the use of chemicals, pesticides, GMO seeds, foods, antibiotics, solvents, and other single-use plastics, these are all bad habits that are starting to be implemented in the rural areas, which of course will lead to significant damage, both in the environment and in people's health. Uncontrolled urban development, consumptive lifestyles have also contributed to pollution and other issues. We have to be careful about that. So when we implement technology or solutions from the urban side into the rural side, we have to be very careful how this, and of course, the coronavirus pandemic has made things even more challenging and brought a whole set of new issues. Now, I want to switch tracks and share a little bit about livelihoods. And the example I'm going to take that we have worked on is one right from here from the US. And this is a community from the Mississippi Delta, a town called Clarksdale in Mississippi. You heard from the executive director yesterday of the Mississippi State Development Authority. I want to go a little bit more into the details. Underserved communities in the US are facing unprecedented instability and unemployment without necessarily having the skills to cope with the demands of tomorrow, especially in the technology side. We are aware that there's at least 1 million technology-related jobs that still remain unfilled due to lack of skilled labor. And most of them don't necessarily need a full 4-year degree. So the company that we were involved in helping to get off the ground, called People Shores, has a simple mission to deliver high-quality digital transformation services from onshore centers in the US, but based in underserved US communities, where there's high levels of unemployment, where the skills may not necessarily exist. But the bottom line is it's empowerment through education and employment. So Clarksdale in Mississippi, for those of you who may not be familiar with this, is located in Coahoma County in the Mississippi Delta, one of the most underprivileged regions in the United States. Employment opportunities have pretty much disappeared due to mechanization farming and changes in manufacturing and migration out of the local town. African Americans comprise roughly 80% of the population. The median household income is about $31,000. but the poverty rate is approximately 35%, which is quite mind-boggling. So what the People Shore Center that we set up there has developed a system with stakeholders, ecosystem of stakeholders with local government, social agencies, state government, academic institutions, and the workforce development agencies. And we've constructed a fully secured facility with a capacity of 400 team members. And this is a snapshot of the team there. Currently, we employ about 100 associates, of which 90% are African-American and a high proportion of women. And they are being trained in some of the latest technologies in the IT services, including things like RPA, AI, ML, artificial intelligence, customer support, as well as at the other end, call center services. We also have economically challenged veterans as part of this. And the community is already seeing the impact of this. We have created jobs. We are training these young people for skills for the next decade. And our vision here is to touch the lives of 1 million Americans, building a more inclusive workforce in an increasingly digital world, and provide opportunities for these underserved youth as well as communities. So that's, there's a small 1-minute video here, which I don't know if it's going to operate from this or we have to go back to the link. Yeah. If you can play that.
We have established a deep personal relationship with the leadership of People Shores.
We cannot see the screen, Dr. Sunny.
On February the 28th.
Apologize for the technical
Two squares at the bottom.
Yeah.
Click on one.
We have established a deep personal relationship with the leadership of People Shores. And today,
On February the 28th, we're going to have a singular day here in Clarksdale, really in the state of Mississippi.
with our friends at Automation
The
Anywhere.
global leaders in the development of robotic process automation, artificial intelligence software, here in Clarksdale to cut the ribbon on the first in our state, first in this region, RPA Training Center located in the People Shores Center in Clarksdale. This provides our people regionally with an educational and job opportunity that has never existed here.
I never even thought about it. No, I never thought about IT here in Clarksdale, Mississippi. I am ecstatic about prospects here. I never thought I would have a career in tech.
Well, you know, the tech industry would be relatively new in the Mississippi Delta. And that's why it's interesting that People Shores has been able to implement the soft skills that were needed to make sure that the employees are on point. And so far, we're hitting it out of the park.
Their impact is going to be so significant in helping to create financial sustainability and a greater quality of life and new opportunity for our citizens here who are capable of taking advantage of that opportunity.
So that was just an example of the fact that the ideal village concept in the project is global. We've talked a lot about sorry about that. Sorry about that. So as I said, that's an example of how the concept is global, and we're at the beginning of a great, I would say revolution might be a strong word, but evolution from where we are to get more equity in the world and serve 70% of the population which is living in rural, or at least 70% of the global population which is living in rural areas. And please join us on the journey. I will now hand it back to Dr. Sunny for the next session.
Good morning. That was excellent, Sundar. And I am very pleased to welcome Dr. James Robert Doty. Dr. Doty, if you could turn on your video and audio. Dr. Doty is a neurosurgeon. He is widely acclaimed throughout the world for his clinical and surgical skills. But his unique contribution to Stanford University was as the founder and director of the Center for Compassion and Altruism. He has really connected across different communities, cultures, creeds, and professions in order to bring compassion and training related to compassion to the students, fellows, residents that we have on the Stanford campus and around the world. So Dr. Doty, I hand over to you as the chair for the next session.
Well, thank you for having me. And I've been blessed in that, I somehow turned everyone off. I apologize. I've been blessed for the opportunities, and I think this next, my computer here is going haywire. I feel fortunate that this next session is really going to tie, hopefully, everything together that was previously discussed and give us some new thoughts and insights into how we can use this information across the world to improve the lives of so many people in rural areas. We're going to start, and I'm trying to find my page, which was up here just a second ago, in terms of the agenda, which suddenly left my computer here. I apologize. So give me just 1 second.
Doty, I can bring that up.
Yeah, would you mind doing that? I don't know where it went on my computer. Perfect. So we have 4 wonderful speakers. I think probably many of you know these individuals. I've been fortunate to have relationships with 2 of them, and I'm sure if the other 2 are as talented, thoughtful, and caring as the first 2 that I know, then this is really going to be quite an extraordinary session. So first we're going to start with Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati, who really has, for the last over 20 years, been at Parmarth Ashram in Rishikesh, and has worked around the world to promote values, sustainability. And she's going to speak with us about eternal values for America's future, a new perspective. And after that, Sri Radhanath Swami, who is the founder of the Govardhan Eco Village in Mumbai, which is really a model for sustainable rural development, is going to speak. And after that, Father Ogada, who's the founder of Spiritan Self-Awareness Initiative, is going to talk about Joy Village, which is in Nigeria, and talk about their project and how through the nature of providing care, this results in joy for so many. And finally, of course, Sadguru Sri Madhusudan Sai is going to give the closing keynote on eternal value for sustainability. Past is the future. And afterwards, we're going to have a panel discussion and answer questions. So I think it should be an exciting program, and I'm looking forward to hearing the presentations. Sadhvi, are you there?
It's such a joy and an honor and a blessing to be able to come to you from these holy banks of the sacred Ganga River in the lap of the Himalayas in Rishikesh, India, to be together with you at Stanford University, my alma mater, and to be together in this beautiful conference on Ideal Village. Because our world is a village. It is one village. All of the ignorance and illusion of separation is that which we need to overcome to really live in truth. The truth is, we live in this global village. And it is up to us to figure out how to make that village ideal. But not just the ideal as in idealistic or with our feet not grounded in reality, but rather this beautiful coming together of the real, where we really are now, today, and the ideal, our vision, our intention, where we are headed, and what together we are going to manifest and co-create. And I'm especially so happy to be able to talk with you about those eternal values for a sustainable humanity and a sustainable earth, and especially how they connect with America's future. And I was thinking about, what are those values? What are those eternal, universal values that apply to people of every race, every religion, every color, every culture, every nationality? What are those values which, if we really bring them into our lives, we as humanity will live sustainably, and Mother Earth will live sustainably? And I think the first one, the core one, is oneness. Now, this is a very beautiful place where science and spirituality overlap, because what our spiritual teachings have been telling us for thousands of years, written in our scriptures. Today, quantum physics is discovering, whether we call it string theory or chaos theory or the observer effect or the butterfly effect. What we're talking about is now scientific evidence of how each of us impacts, influences the world. Not just the people next to me upon whom I'm breathing and sneezing, touching, but actually the entire planet. That truth, that we are interlinked and interlocked, that spiritual truth, that we are one. In the same way that the human body is one organism, humanity is one organism, but rather than being made up of separate parts like the body is, humanity is made up of humans together as one humanity. But in the same way that an infection or an illness in any part of the body would cause illness and even death to the entire body, in the same way, any part of humanity that is ill, that isn't safe, that isn't protected, is actually an illness for all of humanity. It would be a tragic joke to say, well, I'm super healthy except for this heart disease that threatens to cause me to keel over dead at any moment. Or, hey, I'm really healthy except for this gangrene in my toe that slowly is creeping its way up my leg. We understand, whether it's heart disease, whether it's gangrene in your toe, whatever it may be, an infected finger, that if you don't take care of it, the entire being is going to suffer. But this is the case with humanity. It has been too long that we've lived in this illusion that any of us can be healthy unless we are all healthy. That any of us can be safe unless we are all safe. And if we didn't realize it before, COVID has made it abundantly obvious. We cannot be healthy unless we are all healthy. We cannot be safe unless we are all safe. Sustainability does not exist in a vacuum. In order for our practices to be sustainable, they must include all. There can't be sustainability for humans unless there's sustainability for the earth. One of my favorite quotations is the one that says, the frog doesn't drink up the well in which it lives. And it seems like, of course, and yet that's exactly what we are doing. It's this tragic illusion that somehow we can desecrate our land, our water, our air, and actually expect that we will stay healthy. Expect that somehow we will be prosperous, successful, as we decimate and destroy Mother Earth. Pandemics will keep coming. Whether it's another virus, whether it's a bacteria, a superbug, whether it's lack of water, whether it's climate change, these are queuing up to wreak havoc on our lives. And so until and unless we really recognize that we are part of Mother Earth, we are made up of the same 5 elements that Mother Earth is made up of. The same water, same air, the same elements that make up Mother Earth are what make us up. We are one with the earth. Until and unless Mother Earth is healthy, we cannot be healthy. The third value is this idea of one family. In the Indian tradition, in the Hindu tradition, there's a beautiful teaching that says, Vasudev Kutumbakam. The world is one family. And there's 2 ways to think about the world. One is as a family, or in Hindi as we say, parivar. The other is as a marketplace, or a bazaar. And so as long as we think about the world as a bazaar, a marketplace, there's competition. It's all about your loss is my gain. It's all about grabbing, hoarding. But when we shift from the value of a bazaar to the value of a parivar, then it shifts from being competition to being cooperation. It shifts from being grabbing and hoarding to being sharing and caring. And so if we can bring this idea, we're already talking about a global village. If we can bring this idea of a global family that will change deeply how we move through the world. As we shift our definition, our focus from I to we. Instead of identifying as just I, if we identify as we, then even semantically, illness becomes wellness. If you take the I of illness and you turn it to we, illness becomes wellness. And it's true not just in a fun semantic demonstration, but it actually is true in how we live in the world. When I shift from thinking and identifying and living just as I, into thinking and identifying and living as we, then within myself, in our communities, and in our worlds, we shift from illness to wellness. The next value that is so important is our vision and our definition of happiness and success. And as we think about this, we come to that idea, that concept about America and America's future. Because here I think we actually have a very interesting dilemma. The very Constitution of the United States grants us the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I think that in many ways, as well-intentioned as that was, and as beautiful as that is in so many ways, it actually has created a culture where we believe that happiness is something to pursue. And inherent in the idea of something I need to pursue is the fact that I don't already have it. Can't pursue something I have. If I need to go on a treasure hunt for it, if I need to run after it, find it, get it, well, it means by definition I don't have it. And what it then has done is created a culture in which we think happiness is something to come from the outside. Something to be bought, something to be earned, something to be obtained, something to be achieved. And so we have found ourselves in a situation, in a culture, in a society, where not only are we beating our heads against the wall, driving ourselves crazy, forsaking our spiritual practices, our family, our health, our mental peace, to buy more, earn more, rise higher on every ladder we can imagine. All in search of that pursuit of happiness. And so if we can shift to an awareness that happiness is actually that which I find in connection to the divine, by any name, any form, it doesn't matter. Connection deeply within myself, connection to each other, connection to the earth, connection to creation. That happiness is actually something I find much more in serving and giving than in getting. And of course we have the science to back that up. So many studies these days are showing, studies on service, studies on altruism, studies on generosity, studies on giving. So many studies are showing actually how much happier we are giving than getting. And when we have that awareness, when we have that shift of value, that it's not about what I get, but it's about what I give, then we have a shift in value of success. Then suddenly success is not just about being at the top of the ladder, the one with the most money, the biggest house, the most cars, the corner office, the one with the most followers on social media, the one who everyone's envious of. Not that. But then our whole definition of success shifts into being one who is successfully manifesting the truth of who I am, which is full and whole and complete, which is a tool in the hands of the divine, which is one who has come onto earth with such gifts to share, to connect, and that success becomes a measure of that, not just money in a bank account, square feet of my house. And that shift of values of happiness and success, I think, is crucially important. Otherwise, as Mahatma Gandhi said so beautifully, we run very fast, but we run in the wrong direction. And lastly, education and technology. They go together these days. It's essential that our values in education become those that actually teach our students, teach our youth to be connected to themselves, to each other, to Mother Earth, to the future that is directly impacted by how they live today, that enables them to be courageous, open-hearted, courageous, that enables them to be creative, that enables them to be not just robots, but actually these connected and creative beings, which is really what our world needs. And that technology that we're training them in, that we're giving to them, that we are hoping that they will develop and be entrepreneurs of, let us ensure that our technology is one that enables us not just to count the number of steps we take each day, but to know how those steps are impacting Mother Earth. And let our technology be that which not only brings the world to our fingertips, but which reminds us deeply in our hearts that there is a world beyond our fingertips. And let our values and our models of economy be that which remembers that economy begins with eco, and that our model of economy, our value of prosperity, must be one that keeps the eco in economy, and one that recognizes that the cost of an item is not just the price tag, but that actually the cost is the cost of the production of that item on the air, on the soil, on the water, on the women and the children who are producing it. And that when our value system is one rooted in more, cheaper, 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 we have products, the production of which requires women and children to be working in sweatshops, the production of which is done in factories that cut corners, that spew waste into the air, into the soil, into the water. Let us shift that value, that a healthy, successful economy, that prosperity and abundance is rooted in our ability to have more, cheaper, but rather that it is our ability to be assets to this global village, that enables us to be ideal citizens of this global village, this global nation, this global oneness. Thank you so much for this beautiful opportunity to share today with you, to be together with you. And let that change, let that shift begin with us. Because whether you look at it spiritually or scientifically, the ripple impact of how we think, how we see, how we eat, how we shop, how we dress, how we live, is rippling out into every corner of the world. Let that change. As Mahatma Gandhi said so beautifully, let us all be that change we want to see in the world.
Thank you so much for that powerful speech. And I think sometimes we do forget that so many times the origins of the products that we use and many of the things that we take for granted have a very long path before they get to us. And oftentimes that path is strewn with the to the detriment of so many people, and yet we never see it. And I think taking the time to understand that and taking the time to think about how potentially you may not need so many things. That's unfortunately oftentimes the nature of capitalism, where we believe that we have to keep up, that we have to maintain appearances, because capitalism doesn't work unless there's constant consumption. And while many people have talked about different forms of capitalism, the fact of the matter, that's the underlying principle. So I think it is time we think potentially of a somewhat different paradigm that is more inclusive and more equitable for people. So Sadhvi, thank you very much. I miss you. I haven't seen you for a bit. So I look forward to the next time we have the opportunity to spend some time together. Thank you again. Our next speaker happens to be a good friend of mine as well, Sri Radhanath Swami. And he is going to talk to us about a model for sustainable rural development in Mumbai, based on his work with the Govardhan eco-village. Radhanath, it's so wonderful to see you, and I haven't seen you for a little bit, although we've been able to spend a little bit of time together on Zoom recently. So great to see you, and thank you for participating.
Om Gyantimidandasya Gyananjana Chalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. I am profoundly grateful and honored and happy to be a part of this very important and essential conference that Stanford University is offering to the world. Thank you, Dr. Doty. Thank you, Sani, for including me. I was asked to speak something about our humble efforts to develop the Govardhan eco-village. It is about 2 hours drive from the city of Mumbai and about 100 acres of land. The basic principle is to try to establish a model of a symbiotic lifestyle where we recognize and respect the need to live in harmony with ourselves, our bodies, our minds, our hearts, and our souls should be in harmony. And through that harmony, we learn the art of living in harmony with Mother Nature, all of the environment around us, and with all living beings. And essentially, that is very much the natural expression of living in harmony with God from a universal perspective. Govardhan Eco-Village is trying to bridge ancient knowledge, wisdom, and techniques with modern science, technology, and techniques. While we're optimally nourishing ourselves, we should be actually giving nourishment to the surroundings around us. Unfortunately, when we're disconnected from these values, the tendency is in trying to nourish ourselves, we're polluting the environment. We're causing an ecological illness. And ultimately, because everything is, as Sadhvi has explained so eloquently, everything is connected. And a comprehensive, holistic perspective of life allows us to see how I treat the environment, how I treat humanity, how I treat all living beings is very much the effect of how I treat my true self. We can see the potential wherein the apparent byproducts of what we do are not a waste, but are actually a resource, because they are. At our Govardhan Eco-Village, we recognize the value of God's gifts in the various resources that are available. Water, for instance, is critical to life, to hygiene in every way. In the area that we're staying, one of the greatest problems in the villages and the farms is drought. There's a high level of suicide and poverty because of lack of water, and so much disease because of improper treatment of water. So at the Govardhan Eco-Village, we've tried to create a model. We have several ponds where we harvest the water during the monsoon rains, and it's there to replenish our soil, our homes throughout the rest of the year. Just one pond alone collects over 10 million liters of water. We also have water treatment. Sewage is a very big problem in this world. But actually, sewage is a great resource if we just understand a science that's built on human values. We have created several sewage treatment systems wherein the water, the gray water and the black water from toilets, from sinks and so forth, they go through gravity to a plant, which was completely natural. And then by gravity, that sewage water goes through various stones and roots and herbs where it's processed by various types of bacteria and worms, and it comes out very clear, usable water. And where this is taking place, it's actually like a paradise. There's so many beautiful flowers and fruits growing, and we have a saying at Govardhan Eco-Village that each and every time you flush your toilet, the flowers bloom sweeter. And actually, one teacher from New York City came and saw that we have many, many hundreds of papaya trees at Govardhan Eco Village, but where this place is that our sewage is being refined, the papayas were so big. And she said, that is not a papaya, that is a pupaya. So actually, it's a very aesthetically pleasing experience to refine sewage. And actually, it could be done anywhere by anyone if we just understand the science of how to do it and have the will, feel the necessity. Our buildings, we have done it in as low a possible of an impact on the environment. We build our bricks out of compressed mud blocks. They're supposedly they will last for centuries. They're very beautiful, and they're hardly 1% of the amount of strain that regular bricks cause to the environment. And we've produced about 100,000 of such bricks. And people from all over the world, they consider it not only very natural and pleasing, but some people have considered it better than what is in a 5-star hotel. So actually simplicity doesn't have to look like or feel like poverty. It's actually has the potential of being very pleasing. We have organic farming, and we make our own natural pesticides, our own natural insecticides, which replenish the topsoil. We have a heirloom indigenous seed bank where we grow, very, very natural, unadulterated food. We have developed most all of the eco-village to be energized by solar power. We have a plant that processes plastic and converts it into usable oil without the slightest trace of pollution in the atmosphere. And in fact, we have pickup areas at many, many villages where we collect their plastic waste and we return to them usable oil without any cost. We have a biogas plant where much of our cooking and much of our agriculture is actually fueled by the dung of our cows and animals. We have a sanctuary for animals, a sanctuary for birds, a sanctuary for butterflies. We have a yoga school, the Govardhan School of Yoga. We have a Ayurvedic hospital as well as a school. These are just a few of the things wherein we're trying to give an example to people of what's not only possible, but what we could all do in our own ways, according to the time, place, or circumstance, if we just have the will, if we understand the need. And how beautiful life can be. We have a vocational school where for the villagers, the young people, they could learn various vocational arts because poverty and illiteracy is so powerfully permeating these villages. We also have various schools we've opened in the villages. We have a Bhaktivedanta hospital. We run a 300-bed hospital near Mumbai, and they go into the villages, and in the schools they give health, education, and to the villagers themselves they give medical services, as well as medical education. We've adopted 74 villages at this time, and it's rapidly expanding. There's over 10,000 families of farmers that are indirectly or directly being affected by these services. The concept is that Govardhan Eco-Village is like a hub of a wheel, and the villages are like the spokes. Because when people see that something is being done, they have confidence. And when that confidence is there by coming to the model of Govardhan Eco-Village, then we can actually go there and teach them these various sciences, which are a synthesis of ancient wisdom and techniques and modern science, technology and techniques. In the villages, we teach women empowerment. We have various schools. We have distribution of food, very nutritious lunches in many of the public schools and private schools there. At Govardhan Eco-Village, there's a retreat center where there's people come for being enlightened and refreshed. And we also have corporate retreats. Many corporations have come, CEOs, managers, employees. And the idea is not only do they have a very healthful, restorative, and happy experience, but they learn spiritual principles, universal spiritual principles. And we have seen how they have applied so many of these ecological, humanitarian, animal rights, and spiritual values to the way they run their corporations. We've had many retreats of universities and colleges, as well as conferences, and many of the leading colleges and universities in the world have come, professors, students, to come on retreats there. Govardhan Eco-Village has been given, by God's grace, dozens of awards by the Indian government, by international governments, by the United Nations for sustainable, with the attempt to be compassionate toward all life. And these are just a few of the things that we're trying to do to really uplift physically, emotionally, and spiritually the villages around us. And in the same way, through the experience and the education and the values, cities and people from all over the world. I believe it's just a seed that's beginning to sprout. And I'm just so grateful that we have this opportunity to serve, because this really is at the heart of the spirit of Govardhan Eco-Village, that the greatest treasure in life is to be an instrument of compassion, to serve for the well-being of others, because things could give some degree of happiness to the body and the mind, but only to love, to be loved, to care gives fulfillment to the heart and to the soul. In the Bhagavad Gita, there's a universal principle which in just 2 lines is so comprehensive. Bhoktaram jagatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suhridam sarvabhutanam gyatva mam shantim richjati. We're all seeking peace, shanti. We're all seeking happiness, Anand. We're all seeking love, prema. And the Gita is teaching the formula in which we can actually experience this and make it not only an idea, but a lifestyle. That everything in creation is the property of a supreme power. It's the property of God, whatever name we may have. And we are not proprietors, but we are meant to be caretakers of the sacred property of the environment, the ecology, and to interact with nature with respect and with wisdom. That all living beings are coming from the same source. We are all brothers. We are all sisters. We are all one family, as Bhagawati has so nicely explained to us. The idea that I'm not just this physical body, but I'm this spirit, the living force within this body. And when we recognize the nature of our own living force, when we understand the Christian concept, the universal concept of the great commandment is to love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and to love your neighbor as yourself. I found this is the heart of Hinduism, this is the heart of Islam, this is the heart of Buddhism, this is the heart of Christianity and Judaism. It's the heart of humanity. To actually express that love through our gratitude and by perceiving the equality of all living beings. The environment is sacred. Every living being is sacred. And to the degree we actually recognize the sacredness of life itself in all of its various forms, the deeper we go into the natural harmony of our own hearts. And unless we live in harmony with our own hearts, if we're polluted within ourselves, then naturally we pollute the ecology. Simultaneous to cleaning the ecology through so many sciences and so many laws and so many technologies, we need to clean the ecology of our hearts. And this is what religion, this is what yoga, this is what spiritual life is for, to actually help us to value that the greatest need in the world and the greatest need in my own life is to appreciate the great value of compassion. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Sri. That was beautiful. I think it does remind us so eloquently that really, when you live a life through compassion, you recognize that all of us are one, and what you do for another should be what you should do for yourself. And I think so many people look at another person as separate and different from them, but in fact, we are all one. In the Bible, of course, there's the statement that what you do for the least of my brethren, you do for me. And I think there's some forms of this in probably every religious tradition. And oftentimes, instead of with a sense of humility and connection to another, many people look down at people in poverty or who are suffering, and they somehow think that they are superior. And the reality is that it is us who so often can learn from them, and not chasing the fruits of oftentimes capitalistic intent. Having a big house, having a new car doesn't affect that emptiness that so many people carry with them, and they're confused because they believe that the acquisition of things will fill that emptiness that they have inside, versus seva, or being of service, which is the thing that will give you the greatest satisfaction and the deepest sense of your own humanity. And it's all based, I think, on compassion. I thought it was interesting you said that you can come to the eco-village and it's like a luxury resort in some ways. And it's so true, because you look at some of these luxury hotels and the underpinnings of them are so filled with negative consequences, washing the sheets every day, all the other aspects of this, when in fact, when you engage individuals in an eco-sustainable way, every action is a benefit to our planet. And you are leaving very little waste, you're expending very little excessive energy, yet you're reaping the benefits of this action, which creates a wonderful environment. And I think that's something that none of us should forget. For those of you who have questions, I think we'll answer them at the end of the discussions, and I am keeping a list of them. So thank you, Sri. It's great to see you again. You look handsome as ever. And I look forward to spending some time with you in the future.
Dr. Doty, all my love to you and your family.
Thank you, my friend. Our next speaker is Father Charles Ogada, and he's going to talk about Joy Village in Nigeria and the eternal values associated with that work, and how the very nature of the village not only results in complete care, but the release of joy among all those involved. So without further ado, Father Charles Ogada.
I'm so deeply happy and so humbled to be part of this conference. I must thank all the instruments of love that have made this possible. I'm so inspired by the previous speakers, Sadhvi and Radhanath Swami. I'm so inspired. I will just be putting another note on the music of their dance. Same melody, same harmony. How these eternal values that they have spoken about, this oneness, respectful nature, we've been trying to implement in Africa, in Nigeria, in this part of the world that is so ravaged by so many poverty and disease. The eternal values. The eternal values are within each and every one of us in fullness. I will be sharing my screen. I'm sorry. Okay. Just 1 minute. Okay, what are the eternal values as the previous speakers have so beautifully elucidated? These are qualities that lie within each human personality, waiting to be drawn out and translated into action. They are inherent in each and every one in fullness. There's no human being that has less of these human values, these eternal values. They're eternal because they transcend time and space. They're not born and they will never die. And they're universal because they cut across all bounds, boundaries of creed, culture, caste, country, color, any bounds whatsoever. So these values are within each and every one of us in fullness. And in Joy Village, we concentrate on 5 core human values, which actually encapsulates all the values that one can ever aspire to. And these are the values of love, peace, truth, right conduct, and nonviolence. What is love? Love is what makes us feel the oneness. Just as Sadhvi just beautifully presented, imagine how the eyelid protects the eye. And the reason is very simple, that the eyelid and the eye feel the oneness. And the ideal village is when we really begin to see in every human being this spontaneous protection of the other without any mind processing. The heart just feels and goes out to protect the other. This oneness that we feel is what we call love. When we see another cry, it becomes our cry. When we see another laugh, it becomes our laugh. Because we remove those mental opinions or bondage that prevents our experience of our oneness, which is in the heart. And what is this result? The result of love is peace. This unshakable equanimity of bliss in all circumstances that does not and cannot be affected by any external circumstance. That inner connection that Radhanath talked about, that inner connection that that makes us, and that center that makes us feel that we are one with everything. And this is the truth of our being. To know this is truth. Our true being is oneness with everything. This is the knowledge of the truth. And this knowledge actually results in right action. The way we act, the way we behave, the way we feel is as a result of our knowledge of the truth and the experience of love and peace within. And of course, non-violence is the result of all the other values. And when we realize that we are one with everything, we cannot hurt anything. And so how we try as much as possible to bring these values, these eternal values, into action. One thing I must say is, what matters is not providing water to people. What matters is not providing education to people. What matters is the transformation that we bring about through the provision of water, through the provision of education. People are educated, but they do not have love. People are educated, but they are not joyful. So when we provide these basic amenities to humans, we must not forget to integrate the values that makes them alive, without which these amenities become actually empty, and actually they can also become disastrous. So in Joy Village, we aspire to live by the human values, to integrate in every action, every word, every thought, every emotion, every relationship, these core human values. In what the Joy Village started not by a plan, but by the divine compassion. One day I saw a child licking on ripe orange because there was no water anywhere, and the villages do not have water for 6 months. They live on rain harvesting. And it became my thirst. And this is the compassion that exists in everyone. And by trying to provide water for this child, Joy Village started. And that is the truth. Once we begin to help another person, it creates a network of compassionate acts. And all people are drawn to this force that we call love. But it needs one person to start it. You take a step, the whole universe will rush to you to make it a viral step. And so we're providing water, we call it liquid love, to more than 34,000 people in 11 communities. And in the area of Medicare, eternal love in action is present in Joy Village. What we emphasize actually is not the provision of medicine, it is the provision of care. Because it is this care that heals people. And actually it is also this care that makes them not to be sick in the first place. So we devote a lot of time and energy to train our medical health providers on how to provide care and love through the instrument, through the medium of medicine. And it is so fulfilling and rewarding for both the giver and the receiver. There's no tension. It becomes a joy village. Everyone is joyful. The medical doctors are joyful. The patients are joyful. Even they smile in the hospital, even they are sick, because that environment of love that pervades everything. And this is the gift of life. More than 69,000 children in Nigeria suffer from congenital heart diseases. And most of them just died before they could reach the age of adolescence. And this is really a pity. And to see children suffer and they do not know why they are suffering. A child wants to play with another child and he cannot run. So we started this gift of life. We're inviting expatriates to help us from India and giving life to children. Children are our future. And also we have this gift of limbs. This family of love. Joy Village is not a place. Joy Village is a place in the heart. So Joy Village is global. And our brothers and sisters have gone through some traumatic experience of accident or sickness, and part of their limbs had been cut off. So we initiated this gift of limbs whereby we provide them with artificial limbs. But this is just a start. We go further to create a family whereby we make them to realize that their physical challenges can never and will never create a barrier to their aspirations in life. In fact, it actually aids it. It actually makes them to achieve more through overcoming difficulties of their physical challenges. And in the area of truth in action, we've built schools, temples of healing, where 1,200 village children are given value-based education free of all cost. In our school, we do not just teach mathematics, physics, chemistry, and so on. Our schools are an environment whereby children are initiated into the true meaning of life. While we're teaching them chemistry and all that, we integrate the human values, and they begin to awaken their higher thinking, to begin to ask, where did I really come from? What is the origin of time and space? Who am I? Where am I going to? What is the mystery of death? Like these children begin to really reprioritize their values. They begin to know and experience their oneness with everything that is. They begin to know and experience the true essence of life, which is in giving, in serving, in making another person happy. And we just discovered that once you make another person happy, you are 10 times happier. It's so true. I think Radhanath said it so well. And of course, without teachers, there are no students. And more importantly, without good teachers, there are no good students. So we established the Nigerian Institute for Human Values Education, where we have actually impacted and trained more than 5,600 teachers in Nigeria and in Uganda and elsewhere. So we invest a lot in awakening these human values in the teachers. Once this is done, the rest is taken for granted because the teacher cannot teach what he or she is not. Love is not a noun. Love is a verb. It's a feeling. So when the human values are awakened in the teachers, the rest is taken for granted. So that's why we invest a lot in professional and ongoing training on human values education for our teachers and for teachers elsewhere. And we also have this care for old is gold, care for the elderly. It is a dual program where we take care of our seniors in the communities. We have about 73 seniors living in about 48 villages around. But also we use this as an opportunity to train our students on service. So we call it service learning. So by helping in the communities, visiting the hospitals, taking care of the elderly people, they begin to awaken that joy of helping. And once that joy is awakened, the rest is taken for granted. They will want to feel the joy again. And it is this joy that they want to feel that will drive them into helping other people when they go out of the society. So, and also when they meet old people, they come back, and we sit back and think, what is the cause of suffering? What is the cause of old age? What is the mystery of death? Where are we going to after all this? It creates an environment of inquiry for the students, and is magical. So service learning is an essential component for effective human values education. And just a quick touch on the impact of COVID-19 lockdown on education in our school. We have more than 1,200 students in our schools. And about 80% or more of that come from very, very poor backgrounds. So we invested, when the lockdown for 6 months or so was, we really have to think how these children can continue in their education. So but we invested heavily on online education. But our analysis shows that only about 20% of our students were able to participate in this online education. I'm not going to say much about it, but I'm just want to say that we are so happy that schools have resumed, and all our students, the joy of all our students coming back to school cannot be quantified in words. The greatest thing the worst punishment you can give to our children in Tela is to ask a child, don't come to school tomorrow. The child will begin to cry. The reason is very simple, because in school they feel love. In school they feel family. In school they feel fulfilled. In school they see a vision. In school they are not judged, they are not condemned. They are just loved for who they are. The environment is created, and they are just like seed in Radhanath's eco-village. When you put the papaya, you put the seed in the environment of poo, and the seed will germinate. There's nothing wrong with the seed. It's the environment that we have to create so that the natural inherent values in these children will explode. So we talk about the eternal values of peace. All of us are aware that one of the greatest factors of violence and division amongst humanity is the factor of religion. So we take it very, very seriously to educate from the kindergarten, educate our children that all religions are equally and validly a part to the oneness. To respect all religions, and also to understand what they symbolize and what they mean. So we engage our children in nourishing not only their intellectual well-being, but also their emotional and mental well-being. We train our children on how to handle their emotion. Nobody's going to go and eat poison. So when children are presented with an environment of anger, they say, no, I'm not going to eat this poison, because just as the way I want to consume physical poison, I'm not going to consume emotional poison. And we do this through prayer, through mantra, through mindfulness exercises, through meditation, through all sorts of exercises, to also make sure that our children, as they are growing physically, as they are growing intellectually, they are also growing emotionally. And on right action, we integrate the value of righteousness, right conduct, through creative activities in Joy Village. It is worthy to note that most of our children come from very poor backgrounds. So after giving them free primary school, free nursery school, free secondary school education, about 80 or more of them, 80% of them will not be able to access higher education in these universities. So it became a challenge, because if they cannot take care of themselves, then the education we give them might not be of much value. So we started to create this skills acquisition center, where we are doing dressmaking at the present time, and the production of reusable menstrual pads for children who are experiencing unhygienic means of handling their menstrual periods. So, and we hope to expand this to carpentry, electricity, plumbing, building, metalwork, graphics, design, graphics and designs, photography, and so on. So that when our children graduate from our secondary school, they have also graduated with the basic skills, so that they will also not only take care of themselves, but also give back to society. And we have also, we have these 240 hectares of beautiful farmland, natural farmland, virgin farmland. And the river is called a She River, running 3.5 kilometers within our farmland for multiple irrigation. And you see, our children love to go to the farm. They love to touch the soil. They love to play with the ground. And this natural tendency, when we are small, we all want to play with the ground, with the soil, with the rain. We're running the rain. So our farm provides an avenue where our children also learn to be one with Mother Earth. They learn that actually all of us have come from Mother Earth, and all of us, we go to Mother Earth. And that's why we call it motherland farm. Nani means motherland farm, is to enhance this ecological awareness in our children. And just to say that about 30 to 40% of our children, they come to school without food. They didn't eat in the morning, they didn't eat in the afternoon, and they are not sure of eating in the evening when they go back when they go back home. So we started this Beer Food Project, whereby we offer food to children who did not come to school with food. Children cannot learn when they are not happy. And we know that hungry children are not happy. So when we give them food, automatically, spontaneously, they will become so happy. And then when we give them education, it will sink. So this Beer Food Project is a very beautiful thing that we do for our children. And we plan to expand it to other schools. Presently, logistics cannot allow that. So finally, let me talk about the eternal values of nonviolence in action in Joy Villages. Children, most of the time, are traumatized. They just find themselves homeless. They just find themselves in a broken family. They just find themselves without a mother or father. So we created this Heart of Love Children's Home, where we take care of children that society cannot take care of. A child came to us, was brought to us. He was brutalized. The person he was staying with used a hot knife to give wounds all over his body. And this child is so beautiful. There is nothing like a bad child. It's all about the environment that we create to bring about the goodness in children. So the Heart of Love Children is such a joy that because they live with us 24/7 hours. And to see them grow beautifully is actually one of my greatest joys. And this is a home with a heart. And we just do one thing to create environment where they can feel who they are, environment of joy. And motivate, we also in Joy Village do what we call motivate awareness. I've talked about this. Motivate awareness, whereby we call leaders of the different religions, and then we create awareness of the different religions. And then everyone begins to appreciate and actually realize that what I do is actually what you do. And we are all going to the same place. We are all aspiring to the same goals. Finally, just to sum up, the 5 eternal human values of love, of right conduct, of peace, of non-violence, and of love. The essence of it all is love. Love as thought is truth. Love as action is right conduct. Love as feeling is peace. And love as understanding is non-violence. The essence is love. And this love is the oneness that we all feel. I want to thank all of you and all our partners that have actually helped us in collaboration to create this love, this joy on earth. And our dream is that Joy Village expands to every corner of the world to make our world Joy Village, to make our world ideal village. Without joy, any village cannot be ideal. So I thank each and every one of you, and I thank the organizers for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Ogada. That was beautiful. And the interesting thing is that use the word care. As a physician and a neurosurgeon, one of the things I found myself is that while my job is technically challenging as a neurosurgeon, equally as important is to care for the patient. And success in someone healing oftentimes, frankly, has more to do with how you care for the patient and not necessarily even the surgery. And this, I think, you've exemplified through every aspect of what you do, because caring for another results in your own physiology personally improving, but obviously it has a huge impact on the other. And in some ways, this is like a rippling effect that then affects everyone. I think the other aspect of emotion regulation and learning acceptance of other faiths in some ways insulates them also for the future in heading towards things that result in negative emotional states. Because when you can look at another and accept them, understand where they're coming from, care for them, it's extraordinarily powerful. And I think the work you're doing has very, very much emphasized that reality. So thank you so much. And it's such a joy to hear about the work you're doing. And I hope I have the opportunity to meet you in the future in person.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. James. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's wonderful. Our next and closing keynote, who will sort of talk about this idea of eternal values for sustainability, is Sadguru Sri Madhusudan Sai. And he's a spiritual guru and a humanitarian. So again, Father Ogada, thank you so much. And we'll now have our closing keynote. Take care.
Warm greetings to everyone from Sathya Grama, Karnataka, India, and special reverential greetings to Radhanath Swamiji as well as Sadhvi, Bhagawati Saraswati Maji. Also our greetings to the session chair, Dr. James Doty, from the Center for Compassion and Altruism, Stanford University. Our special appreciation to Dr. Sundar Kamath and Dr. Sunny Anand for having organized this 5th annual Ideal Village Conference at Stanford in association with our foundation, Sai Global. This conference, which dwells on the idea of sustainability, is perhaps the most relevant conference in the present times. And the idea of sustainability is not new to Indians. The very first mention of such an idea is there in our Upanishads. And Ishavasya Upanishad is a part of the Yajurveda. In its very opening verse proclaims, Ishavasyam idam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bunjitha magridha kasyasvidhanam. The meaning is, all this that you see in this changing world is all enveloped by the divine, and therefore consume with sacrifice and do not take any other person's wealth. However simple this may sound, it's very, very profound and deep. Just a small Upanishad of 18 verses, in its very first opening verses, gives out the secret of sustainability. Simply put, it means give more, take less. That's what is meant by consuming with sacrifice. When Mahatma Gandhi was asked by an impatient journalist to summarize his philosophy of life in just 3 words, he quoted these 3 words from this very Upanishad when he said, Tena Tyaktena Bunjitha. The poor journalist who did not know Sanskrit asked him to translate it for him. And Mahatma Gandhi said, it means consume with sacrifice. When we sacrifice first and consume later, when we give more and take less, we become sustainable as a society, as a planet, as human race. When UN thinks about sustainable development goals, or when we all talk about sustainable development, sustainable future, more often than not, these ideas are based on capitalistic or socialistic ideas of society, very much against or different from the spiritual fundamentals that Indian texts offer us. If you could think of the whole human race in terms of 4 quadrants, with x-axis about giving and the y-axis about taking, the first quadrant would have people who give less and take less. They are the minimalists. And it's a trendy thing to be today, to take less, but then also give less. Then there are those in the second quadrant who take more and give less. I need not tell who they are. They are the capitalists of the world, who take the resources, turn them into profitable ventures. And when it comes to giving back to the society, there is very little that they do. Then there is this third quadrant of those who take more and give more. These are the socialists who believe that everybody should get their share of the resources that the earth has to provide, because everybody has right over it, equal right. And therefore they want everybody to consume equally. But with equal consumption of all, there is furthermore pressure on the resources. And therefore they take more, though they also give more to everyone. But none of these 3 are sustainable ideas. The fourth quadrant, which talks of people who give more and take less, they are the ones who can create a sustainable future. They are the spiritualists of the world. The capitalists, the socialists, the minimalists can at best do less damage, but they cannot correct the existing situation. They can take less from the nature, but they cannot replenish it. Only spiritualists are those when they not just reduce, not just recycle, not just reuse, but refuse to take what they don't need. The world has a hope to become sustainable. Saint Francis of Assisi would pray, "O Divine Master, grant that I may not so seek to be consoled so as to console." When he prays this way, he only prays that I give more and take less. To be understood as to understand, to be loved, love with all my soul. In his prayer, what he essentially says is that I should always be ready to give more than what I receive. This is the simplest way to a sustainable planet, sustainable societies, sustainable relationships, sustainable happiness in life. Give more, take less. When we believe that we are born not to take but to give, when we know that we are here to serve and not to rule, when we realize that we are here to sacrifice, not to accumulate, we become sustainable. Now, the late American President John F. Kennedy said in his famous inaugural address, "Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country." He just meant that. When we change our attitude from what can I get to what can I give, sustainability is the natural outcome. As an American proverb goes, we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children. And that's precisely the second part of the verse, which says, do not take another man's wealth. We don't own this earth. We hold this earth in trust for our children, for our future generations. And it should only be looked at from that point of view and not from the point of view of having any rights, but only responsibilities towards passing on a better planet to the future generations than what we have inherited, from our ancestors. This would not be possible unless we sacrifice our selfish desires of consuming endlessly and instead exercise restraint in our ways. On a lighter note, during these unprecedented COVID pandemic times, when consumerism is nosediving and most of the economies are plunging, somebody sent me a message which said, when we don't buy things now which we don't need with the money that we don't have, the economies are plunging. That is the story of economic bubbles. That is the story of the world that we live today in. Just because we have access to finances, just because we have access to cheap debt, that does not give us the right to buy more than what we need. When we buy mindlessly, borrow endlessly, what are we doing essentially? We are causing an artificial price rise of even essentials that are required for every man's survival, and thereby making them unaffordable to the common person. Just because we have access to money does not give us the right to consume more. All the economic bubbles, be it the Great Depression of 1930, to the dot-com bubble, to the recent subprime mortgage crisis, the world has witnessed the downside of borrowed financial growth fueled by senseless lending and mindless spending. And the root cause of it all is simply taking more than what we need out of sheer greed. Mahatma Gandhi said, there is enough for everyone's need, but not for everyone's greed. Therefore, all that is not a need is simply all that which does not belong to us. That is another man's wealth, as per the Upanishads. A BBC report by the title, How Many People Can Live on This Planet Earth, that by the end of this century, we will have more than 12 billion people, humans, inhabiting this planet Earth. They also said, very interestingly, that if every person on Earth, on an average, starts consuming as much as an average Indian does, then the Earth's resources can sustain up to 15 billion people. But the catch is here. If everyone on Earth starts consuming as much as an average North American does, the Earth has only so much resources to support 1.5 billion people, and we have gone past that figure probably 5 times by now. Therefore, the only way to sustain the planet, its resources, is to consume less and consume only what is very, very necessary. And just because you have the rights, you have the money, you have the might to take more than what you need, you should not. That's the responsible behavior that is called for in order to create a sustainable future. The monetization of essential commodities, commercialization of essential services have led to an unsustainable world. Today, we trade in futures of food grains without bothering about food for our future. We sell services like education and healthcare and burden the sick and the students alike under burgeoning debts. And US is completely aware of the $1 trillion debt or $1.5 trillion that is there in student debt, causing depression, suicides, and all kinds of other immoral practices in corporates. Is this the way we can create a sustainable future? Definitely not. Therefore, the need is to revisit our past, when the great cultures of this planet, originating in a spiritual outlook of life, respected all life and existence and cared for each other, thereby taking less and giving more. The ancient South African philosophy of Ubuntu, which loosely put means I am because we all are, defines the need for looking at the whole of creation as one interconnected and interdependent entity. Unless we develop this deeper spiritual outlook and shun selfish materialism, sustainable future will remain a distant dream. Let's not forget that this earth has been here for 5 billion years now, and probably it will be another 5 billion years by the time it crashes into the sun of our solar system. So forget about saving the planet Earth. It's not about that. We as a human race in their modern avatar have emerged only probably 200,000 years ago. And if you can think of whole of Earth's life as one full year, humans have appeared 1 minute before the midnight of December 31st. And that says volumes about who needs to be saved. It's not the earth which needs saving. It's the human race which needs saving. And it is in our own favor that we behave responsibility so that we as a human race would survive, so that we as human societies would pass on this legacy to our future generations. And for our sake and for the sake of our future generations whom we owe this planet, we need not merely reduce, reuse, or recycle, but actually refuse to consume more than what we need to. Without the way we lived in our past, firmly rooted in our spiritual togetherness, there is no future, let alone a sustainable future. These are the thoughts that have come from the very ancient texts of most of the world cultures. Take less, give more. That is the secret to sustainability. And on this occasion, when there are so many intellectuals, so many scientists, technologists, educationists, and people from all other walks of life, very eminent people have gathered to deliberate on this idea of sustainability, I want to request them on behalf of us who are there in India. India lives in its villages, said Mahatma Gandhi, way back in 1940s. And it is true till today. While a part of India lives in the cities, there is the other India that lives in villages. Cities have had unprecedented, unbridled, almost mushroom-like growth. And all these principles of sustainability have been thrown to winds in the wake of the tremendous pressure to provide for the ever-increasing population in the cities. But if India needs to develop as a whole, and I may to some extent be able to generalize it for the rest of the world, where there are developing countries, what we call third world countries, and there are the developed countries. And if you take an average of the whole world, there are a large number of people living in the developing countries akin to the villages in India. So the next phase of growth is about growing these villages, growing these developing countries. And the policies, the principles, the methodologies have to be very different from what has happened in the cities. We cannot afford to repeat these mistakes that we made while developing our cities. We have to retain the originality, the traditions, the culture, the naturality of our villages, at the same time provide them with the modern technology, facilities, amenities, which will make their lives easier, comfortable, and safer. There is much to be done in the field of providing safe drinking water, energy, maternal health, children's health, malnutrition, infrastructure in villages, veterinary sciences, and a whole lot of things. But if this time we can learn from our past and depart from the present that we are facing, we can build a much more beautiful, a much more sustainable future than we can ever imagine. So I invite you all to draw from these great ancient spiritual ideals of human civilizations, which respected all creation, which believed in the interconnectedness of the entire planet, which was convinced that either we all live together or else we all will die together. Let us depend on these ancient ideas, and therefore our past alone can create our future, our sustainable future. I'm very honored to be here this way, which is the new normal now, but I'm happy to be here to discuss some of these ideas with all of you, and I look forward to a lasting participation in terms of our efforts to create a sustainable future for the human race. I invite you all to come to India, work with us to help develop our villages and make this world, as they say, a better place, a sustainable place to live in. Once again, gratitude on behalf of our institutions, to the organizers, as well as all the participants, and to a special acknowledgement to the services of Stanford, who has provided us with this opportunity. I once again thank everyone involved, and I conclude. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sadhguru Sri Madhusudan Sai, for your wonderful thoughts and insights. I think everyone would concur with many of those statements. So what we're going to do now is to have a discussion with our panelists, who I hope are still with us. Sri Radhanath Swami, Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati, and Father Ogada. Maybe each of you could, obviously, we've had 4 people who've given very, very similar perspectives on how to create a sustainable world that is one in which we look at the world as not being separate from us in the sense of other people, but that we're all one. And we've also talked about the perspective of the reality that all religions fundamentally are based on love and compassion at their best. Maybe each of you can answer the question of what stops many from actually recognizing this universal truth and from them participating. As we've seen, there's vast income inequality. We see people who are fundamentally living in wretched excess, yet there's so many people who are suffering, who even a small amount of the money those individuals spend would be transformative in their lives. What is the barrier for that connection? And any of you can begin if you'd like. I guess I have to pick someone.
Okay, maybe I start. One day we were having a prayer with our teachers. We usually come every morning, every other day, to have self-awareness exercise and to pray. And one of those days, I fell. And before I could reach the ground, about 2 or 3 teachers have rushed to me to prevent me from reaching the ground. And suddenly, all the teachers were like, my fall was their fall. They expressed this emotion and sound. Now, after the fall, something else happened. They began to inquire, oh, are you okay? What happened? Did you sleep yesterday night very well? You discover 2 things happening here. The compassion comes first from the heart. Then the reasoning comes second. When we twist it, that is the barrier. When the mental processing comes first and we ignore the feeling in our heart, then we create a barrier that connects us from each other. Most of the time, we don't listen to our hearts. We listen to our heads, the mental processes that goes on. But compassion comes first. When you see another person cry, there is something in you that really is awakened. But the mind begins to ask, why is he crying? Who made him to cry? All these things comes as a barrier. to our experiencing oneness, to our going out to help another person. Once we do not listen to our head and go to what our heart feels, we will not experience these barriers. And once also we begin to listen to our heart begins to become stronger than our head. But once we listen to our head more, our head becomes stronger than our heart.
Any other comments?
We are constantly being bombarded by weapons of mass distraction. And by nature, the spirit within everyone is a part of God. We all have inherent goodness, inherent love, and inherent compassion, but we're so distracted. There's a Sanskrit line, paradukkha dukhi, which is the definition of a person who's enlightened. That means we see other people's suffering as our own suffering, and we feel it, and other people's happiness as our own happiness. That's our nature. Our hearts are crying for that, but we're so disconnected. We're so distracted. And it's important that we have role models. And the world really needs role models, people who are valued for their character, people who are valued for their compassion, people who are honored and respected for their willingness to serve and not just consuming and consuming and consuming, because that's a very empty, superficial, and hollow life. A full life is something within ourselves to love and express that love through everything we do, through everything we have. And, we need to be reminded. And such wonderful events like today that Stanford University is hosting is helping us to remember this.
Sadhvi, you were going to say something.
Sure. I think also we're living in an epidemic of fear. And it's a fear of lack. We speak a lot about the myth of scarcity. And what I think it has given us is this pandemic of stress. But it's a stress not actually of those who don't have running water, who don't have food, who don't have money to treat physical ailments, who don't know where their roof is going to be fixed and the rainy season is coming. But it's this stress rooted in this myth of scarcity, that there just isn't enough. There isn't enough happiness. And if there isn't enough happiness, if there's some finite amount of happiness, if there's a happiness pie, well then the bigger a piece you eat, the less is left for me. If there's a success pie, the more you have, the less left for me. And it's an incredible tragedy of our societies today, where if you get people really honest, forget even compassion for those who are in need for just one moment. We'll get there in a second. But along the way, just look at, are you able to actually be happy when a friend of yours, someone you know, a neighbor, a colleague, succeeds, gets married, has a child, has something wonderful happen in their life, without even a twinge of negativity? Are you really able to feel happy for them? And similarly, if someone has something bad happen to them, are you really able to simply feel sadness for them, with them, without even a twinge of happiness, thinking that somehow now the global happiness pie has gotten bigger and there's more of a piece for you? And that sense, what it has done is it's led us into fear, and it's led us into a way of moving through the world, which is grabbing and hoarding, this survival mechanism. as though I've got to grab up happiness, grab up peace, grab up success, and of course, grab up resources and grab up my time. And what it has done is it has created such, I think, fear in us that we are too afraid to exhale into compassion. Because compassion requires me to be open. If I'm going to connect with you, I have to be open in my heart, which also requires faith. The story our beloved father was telling us was so beautiful, and I noticed it because it was a story that took place of people from his congregation, people who are rooted in faith and in love, who are able to, for a moment at least, not be hoarding and grabbing and grasping inside. And so I think that the more faith by any religion, any path that we can actually help people have, the more they'll be able to exhale and let go into compassion, into crying at other people's misfortunes, into recognizing that each of us has the, not just the ability, but the dharma, the duty to actually be of service. You spoke about the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi, our Sri Madhusudan spoke about that. Well, oh Lord, make me an instrument of thy grace, an instrument. Make me useful. But we're so afraid. So if we can heal that fear with faith, then we can open into that oneness, into that connection, and we heal and we become beautiful tools and instruments for the planet.
It's interesting that in Sadhguru's comments, he used the slide of the minimalist, the capitalist, the socialist, and the spiritual. And one of the questions I have for you, though, is obviously each of you epitomizes, and don't take this as too ego inflating, but the pinnacle of using faith in the right way to empower others, to allow others to grow and gain insights. But unfortunately, there are many people who are religious or spiritual whose ego actually results in them feeling superior, separate from, deserving of, etc., which actually impedes them from sort of this concept of universal love and caring. Radhanath Swami, since you haven't said anything yet, maybe you can comment on this.
I would like to share, Dr. Doty, an event that really transformed my life. It happened about 51 years ago. 50 years ago, actually.
One or two?
I was sitting with a spiritual man. It was in the town of Vrindavan, the place of Lord Krishna in India. And there was about 4 or 5 people in the room. And this particular person, he had followers all over the world. He had developed ashrams and schools all over the world. He translated and had literally tens and millions of his books published and distributed in so many languages. And he was sitting on the floor, and there was a few people with us. I was just meeting him. And one, I believe he was a journalist, he asked him, "Are you the guru of the world?" And this personality, whose name was Srila Prabhupada, he looked to the floor with tears in his eyes. His emotion appeared to be so genuinely humble. And he paused. Then he looked up and answered the question with the words, "No, I am only everybody's servant. That's all." And when he said that, and he said it from such a place of love, I was thinking, this is what I want in life. I don't want to become God. I don't want to become wealthy. The real most great wealth in the world is to have this type of love where you simply want to be the servant of everyone. And the whole idea of real spirituality is to transcend the ego and become genuinely humble and grateful with love to serve. But unfortunately, oftentimes people take religion or spirituality out of context, and instead of being a weapon to defeat the ego, it becomes a weapon to support and defend the ego. And as Jesus said, seek and ye shall find. And in Sanskrit, there's a beautiful verse, Saragrahi Janardana, that real religion is when we seek the essence and not become disturbed and distracted by all the external aspects, because they're all really meant to bring us to that state of truly being humble beyond our egos in a way that we want to serve with compassion.
Thank you. There's a question from one of the audience members, and any of you can answer it. Obviously, there are other sentient beings besides humans. Does our position give us the right to determine their future? And what are their rights in terms of survival on this planet as well? Does that make sense? Father Ogada, were you going to say something?
I just cleared my throat. Okay, let us look at it from this perspective. Imagine for a second that all the insects in the world were to be dead. You will discover that the entire planet Earth will collapse, including human beings. And then imagine that all human beings were to be dead now. In fact, I think more of the species will be happier. So I think we can judge for ourselves that it is the same oneness. It's not a question of who is superior or who is inferior. In our school, sometimes the parents call me and ask me, what are you doing with our children? What are you doing with my child? He can't even kill an ant in the house. And I say to the parent, look, if your child cannot kill an ant, if your child has that compassion, not just to mindlessly step on an ant, he cannot kill a human being. And this is all about compassion. It's all about being one with everything, and the moment brings about what has to be done. Just as Sadhvi Bhagawati said, if a part of the body is sick, every other part rushes to help. And that's the natural thing, to realize that all of us are part and parcel of this beautiful oneness. And to open our heart, it doesn't need religion to love. It doesn't need religion to care. It doesn't need, religion is just a fabrication. Love is eternal. It has no religion. And that love, even the one that is saying, I have no religion, cannot say, I have no love. So all the beings in this world, seen and unseen, are essential component, equally important for the holistic well-being of being. You can't say, if I ask you to choose between your eyes and your hand, which one is more important? There is no more important. The eye is doing his or her function. The hand is doing his or her function. And the collectivity of all these functions contribute to the well-being of the totality. So we must respect the ant. And we must see the same life in us as in the ant, because it is doing a duty that you cannot do. And without his duty, you cannot live too. So we are grateful even to the ant, to the insect, to the bees. Then we are happy because we then feel the keenness, the oneness. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I wanted to share in response to that a story from when His Holiness the Dalai Lama was with us a few years ago, and we were on a stage. It was in Haridwar, and it was during the time of the Kumbh Mela. So there were tens of millions of people. It was a massive event. And he bends down. He's sitting obviously in the front row of the stage, and he keeps bending down, bending down, bending down, and during the event. And I was wondering, I was sitting just behind him, and I kept wondering, why does His Holiness keep bending down? And later on, I asked someone who had been sitting in the audience, like, did you notice His Holiness kept bending down? And they said, yes, he was picking up some kind of little insect off of the ground, and he kept handing it to his security who was standing right at the foot of the stage. So here he is in the middle of Haridwar, in the middle of the Kumbh Mela, masses of people, obviously masses of insects and whatnot. And here he is on this huge stage at this massive event. But where is his mind? On these tiny little caterpillars. I don't know what they were, but whatever they were, he kept bending down and picking them up and handing them to his guard to safely take it off the stage and take care of it so that no one, as they stood up to speak, would step on it. And it's such, for me, a beautiful embodiment of the teachings. We have prayers in which we pray, Sarve bhavantu sukhina, Sarve santu niramaya, Sarve badrani pashyentu, Ma kaschid dukha bhag bhavet. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be uplifted, inspired, enlightened. May no being suffer. All of the prayers are rooted in all beings. There's a beautiful phrase that Lord Krishna gives us when he says, Sarve bhut hitayrata. It means in the service of, for the welfare of all beings. And it's such a constant reminder. We have so many different prayers and teachings that it's not about, oh, we are here in the human body because we therefore are in charge of the destiny of others. No. The gift of the human body isn't about ruling the other creatures. The gift of the human body with the human mind and consciousness is to be able to rule our own desires, our own ego, our own fluctuations of the mind. It's not about controlling or dominating others. It's about understanding and maintaining and attaining that control of the self. So I think from a deep spiritual perspective, we have lots of clarity that no, we are not here to be able to harm, to use for any purposes. And to me, that includes what we eat, what we wear, what we use. I mean, that there's no spiritual teaching I know that says, oh yeah, feel free to use my creation however you'd like, in whatever way. Consume it for your pleasure. It's all about living in harmony and that awareness that the ant is actually us, that we are all infused with that same divine spirit, just in different ways. So yeah, the other creatures, the other elements are sacred, are divine. You know, when we perform our puja ceremonies, we offer the 5 elements in our ceremony. We offer earth, we offer water, we offer fire, we offer air, we offer ether. Why? To remind us. It's not that God needs our water, God needs our fire, no. It's to remind us the 5 elements, that which the creation is created of, are sacred. They are infused with divinity, and we are offering them to the divine to remind us not to harm, but to heal. And that our role is as caretakers of this sacred, sacred, sacred universe, planet, home.
Thank you. There is a question which, and before I ask the question, I would say that I've had the joy and the pleasure to engage with, meet with, interact with a number of spiritual and religious beings in this world, including the Dalai Lama, who's actually the benefactor of our center at Stanford. And my own experience with these individuals is that when you interact with an evolved spiritual being, invariably, at least I have not ever gotten into a discussion about dogma. The thing that matters to these individuals is, do you care, do you love, are you compassionate? And that's really, I think, the underpinning of every faith tradition. But an individual asks, why is it necessary to have any religion to create, if you will, an ideal village? Isn't good thoughts, good words, good deeds enough to bring harmony in the world?
Why is it necessary to have a school?
Tell me.
Yeah, because when you go to school, you read about medicine, philosophy, mathematics, and you graduate. You don't die in a school. So it's a good thing to be born in a religion, but it is a bad thing to die in a religion. Because religion is a school. It helps you to actualize these values. It gives the environment where you can practice these values. But once you have actualized these values, then you are above religion. You know, you realize that every religion is your religion. Every race is your race. Every person is you. And until that, there might be a nurturing, like someone to help you, a model, that systematically creates the environment for you to really know the purpose of existence. That is all that religion says. It's an instrument, it's a pointer, it's a signboard. But once we cease or we are unaware of the real aim or goal of religion, we begin to take religion as the goal itself, then there's a problem. Then it means that if you are not in that religion, then you are damned because you're not going to go to the goal. But once we see religion as a school, and then you graduated in medicine from Stanford University, I graduated in medicine from University of Nigeria, and we are working in the same place. Same knowledge is taught in the same way. All religions teach the same essence: love, peace, joy. When we graduate, we come together in the world to practice. It doesn't really matter which university you graduated from. We don't ask you, show me the certificate or show me the university graduated from, provided that that university does not extinguish the flames of what it is teaching, which is love, or which is the discipline. Once that flame is there, then it is recognized as a genuine university. So religion is necessary for those who are on the path of the truth. It's when you are teaching a little child, you have to scribble. You want to teach share to the little child. You bring share and you make the child see it. Once the child has got the concept of share, you don't need to scribble. So religion is like teaching a child how a share looks like. But once you encounter the real share, you don't need any scribbling again. In the same way, religion teaches us about our true nature. Once we encounter that true nature, we don't need religion again.
Thank you. Along the same lines, we see terrorism, we see wars throughout the world. We see people striving for powerful positions. And of course, the vast majority of the populations where this is occurring simply want peace and the ability to lead their lives. But how do we deal with this in the modern world? Is there an antidote? And how do we overcome situations where you're suffering as a result of the actions of an individual or a group of individuals that impede you from being, if you will, your best self? Volunteer.
Well,
I feel like it's a school teacher here.
I think we are all humbled by each other. The analogy I'd like to share is a knife good or bad? If a knife is in the hands of a thief, it can be used to kill someone. If that same knife is in the hands of a surgeon, it will be to save a person's life. So everything in this world is like that. According to our values and our character, science, wealth, technology, power, influence can be used to serve our greed, our arrogance, our envy, or can be used to be an instrument of God's love. And the same principle applies to religion. Religion can invoke, for people who don't understand its purpose, as our Father Charles has so nicely explained, religion can be used for terrorism, for violence, for arrogance, that we are the only way and we are better than everybody else. That's not what religion is. That's just something used to serve our lower nature, our ego, our fears, as Sadhvi has explained. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a beautiful verse. Savai pungsang paro dharmo yatobaktir hokshaji ahoitaki apratihata yayatma suprasidati. That true dharma, in Sanskrit, dharma means religion, means occupation, it means our nature, but the highest dharma is not to identify with any particular sectarian idea. The highest dharma is to awaken from within us our deepest spiritual potential to love God, to be an instrument of that love through compassion to others. And when that love is unmotivated by selfishness, by arrogance, and it's uninterrupted by various ever-changing circumstances, only then does that love truly satisfy the self. Each of us, we have a physical body, we have an emotional mind, and we are the spirit, the living force that's animating. And the deepest, most inclusive compassion is compassion to the body through physical well-being and welfare, through the mind, through kindness and encouragement, and to the soul by actually helping direct people to reconnect to that love within themselves, which is beyond birth and death.
Thank you. It's interesting that, at least in my own experience, and I think you might agree with this, one of the significant contributors to negative actions is pain that people carry from their childhood that has never been addressed. And especially in the Western world, there are many people who feel ashamed or that they will be judged by another, yet they carry a lot of pain, anger, and hostility, and oftentimes that is manifested by a lot of negative actions in the world, whether it's bullying somebody, whether it's taking advantage of somebody, whether it's being selfish. And this unfortunately contributes to so much that occurs in the world in a negative way. How would you offer to people who are suffering in this manner and don't feel either an understanding or having the resources to deal with this reality?
That's a beautiful question. And it's something particularly interesting for me coming from a background in psychology into a world of spirituality. So there's a lot of points that you mentioned that I want to touch upon. First of all, this idea of us carrying that pain into today is so powerful that it's almost like, in the same way that I wish that we somehow could impose enforced meditation on people, I also wish on some level that we could force imposed therapy on some level. That in my, we're talking about an ideal village. In my ideal, if I were in charge of the world, people would not only have to meditate, and of course I wouldn't care what school of meditation they did or stream, but they would have to meditate. And they also, on some level, unless they were born and raised by truly enlightened parents, they would have to undergo some type of process through which they were able to see, acknowledge, and then let go of that which happened. But Unfortunately, I have not yet been offered that position by God. So we don't have that ability to be able to have enforced therapy. But I think more and more people, hopefully, are seeing more and more the way that their own, I mean, I see it in terms of those who come to us, more and more people are asking, you know, I had this and this happen in my childhood. How do I overcome this? How do I heal from this? And first of all, it doesn't require a lot of resources. I think that's really a misconception by a field of psychology that, of course, naturally has to sustain itself as a profession and as professionals. So I think it's created a bit of a misunderstanding that in order to heal, you have to engage in a many-year intensive process that is expensive and time-intensive and energy-intensive, etc. One of the most beautiful things that I learned actually here in India is this distinction between the Eastern view of psychology and the Western view of psychology I had come from, which was all about process. And I remember my guru, Puja Swamiji, said to me in the early days, he said, you know, you people in the West, he said, you sit around in a dark room and you talk about how dark it is and how long it's been dark and what the molecules of darkness are made of and how it feels to sit in a dark room. And he said, and here in the East, we go like this on the wall looking for a light switch. And what I have experienced in my personal life is that the field of psychology is very, very good at taking us into the why, into the darkness. Why do I feel like this? But it actually is spirituality that enables us to come from that darkness into the light. And there aren't resources required for that other than an absolute commitment to your own freedom. We hold on to that which has happened to us because on some level, the idea of a mother or a father finally coming around and saying, I'm sorry, finally changing, finally making amends, finally making it up to us is so powerful that a lot of us are actually prepared to forsake our freedom, our joy, our peace, well into our adulthood, waiting for someone to come back and make up to us that which happened in childhood. And sadly, that even is after people have passed away. So we don't let go. And this is where the practice of forgiveness is so powerful. We don't forgive because that which happened was okay, or we condone it. We forgive because we deserve to be free. And if we have a real commitment to our freedom, not on a superficial level, it's not about suppression or denial or oppression or distraction, but rather from a core place of, yes, it happened. And yes, I deserve to be free. I have carried that around long enough. And as these patterns emerge, I have the power to witness them. This is what the practice of mindfulness is about. If I can become mindful of my thoughts, if I can become mindful of eating, mindful of walking, mindful of living, well, then I'm mindful as I start to engage in a pattern of behavior that is a vestige of something that took place 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. So forgiveness is free. Forgiveness doesn't require anything other than us choosing our own freedom over an identification as a victim, over holding a grudge and waiting for someone to come back and make it right, other than whatever we are gaining by not stepping up to the plate of our own life and actually embodying and living the fullness of that divinity. of who we are. And I can tell you from very personal experience, that is possible for all of us. We just have to be ready. And we have to say, I'm ready now. And we can let go. And we can be free.
Thank you so much. And I think what people forget sometimes is that happiness and satisfaction and meaning are not external events that occur. It's actually an internal journey where, one, you do forgive, you're self-compassionate. And I think what happens when negative events have occurred in people's lives is, unfortunately, they carry that burden every day and then refer to it, and it limits them. And if you're able to be kind, to be self-compassionate, to acknowledge that you deserve love, because until you can love yourself, it's very hard to look at the world without the prejudice of the pain that you suffer yourself. And I think in the idea of this ideal village, it is creating an environment where we give people the tools, the resources to allow that self-healing, to allow that self-compassion, to allow that healing. Because each and every person has immense, immense power within themselves that they oftentimes have given away to this pain, this suffering that will tell them they're not good enough, that shames them, that tells them that they don't have the ability. And so I would just like to make that comment, because so much negativity in the world is a manifestation of that reality, I believe. To end this discussion phase, perhaps I can have each one of you make a final comment, and then we will wrap it up. So again, thank you. And whoever would like to be first, that's wonderful. I guess it's you, Shri. Radhanath. So.
Well, the idea of unity and diversity is most crucial to focus our attention on at this particular time. We're living, as they say, a global village. We're also interconnected. The unity and diversity, to see what it is that's sacred, that unifies all of us. And in order to do that, we really need to find that sacredness within ourselves. As you were saying so beautifully, Dr. Doty, there's three principles that in my path we consider very sacred. One is satsang, to be with people who enlighten us, to be with people who enrich our consciousness, our values, our character, and to be with people who bring us closer to ourselves and God, and to be with people who actually have a common purpose to do that. That is called satsang, community. Number two is sadhana, which is when we have the faith and direction that comes through this community, we put some quality time aside every day in a spiritual practice to reconnect. Just like everybody today is going around with cellular phones, but you have to take some time to plug it in and charge it. And similarly, we need to nourish our hearts. We have to connect with the foundation within ourselves that actually brings us peace, brings us joy, brings us meaning, brings us love. And then sadachar. After that spiritual practice, we need to live in harmony with it by living with character, with moral, ethical, spiritual values. And then through all of that, we value the beauty of seva, being an instrument of God's love in compassion to serve others.
Father Ogada.
Thank you. Thank you, Swami. Thank you, Sadhvi, for this beautiful encounter. I would actually want to conclude with a follow-up of this amazing inspiration that Sadhvi gave. The trauma that is happening around our world today holds in itself the freedom of humanity, holds in itself our greatest gift. And most of the time, we are awakened not by pleasures around us or people saying good things around us, but we are awakened to our true reality when hard things happen to us. But also, when we close and we are looking at the hard things, the trauma, the things other people did to us, we forget the beauty, the joy, the tremendous immensity of the goodness that can come out from that. So, for example, forgiveness that Sadhvi talked about. Forgiveness is a divine quality. So for us to forgive, we gain more, infinitely more than holding to what was done to us. Our world is going through a serious crisis right now, but also it is a good thing for us that can actually lead humanity to the golden age if we take the opportunity to face our fears, to accept our faults, to ask, go back to the drawing board and ask where did all this start. So thank you so much, the organizers of this Ideal Village Conference, Stanford University. You've done amazingly good. And I'm so grateful to be part of this. Thank you so much, Sadhvi. Thank you so much, Radhanath. I have watched you a lot, Radhanath, you talking about the story of the woman that, the beggar in India that turned to be the mother of 1,500 children. I told my children this story and it inspired them so much. Thank you so much for everything. Thank you.
Sadhvi, do you have a last comment?
Sure. First of all, just also to say thank you so much. Radhanath Swamiji mentioned satsang. And this evening for me, morning for you, but has felt like satsang. Being together in this presence of truth, in this presence of holiness has been such a joy. This has definitely not felt like a webinar, but has felt really like a satsang. So deep, deep gratitude to all of you. And the only thing that I would end with is, especially today, not exclusively today, but especially today, as so much is happening in America, so much is happening in so many parts of the world that really require us to be engaged. And there's a real misconception that somehow the highest spirituality is to be able to be in peace in the midst of travesty, in the midst of atrocity, in the midst of that which is taking place in the world. And on one level, yes, spirituality gives us that ability to be in peace wherever we are. But the highest goal is not about how can I insulate myself, cocoon myself, and experience peace while the world around me is collapsing. And whether it's from literal hunger, poverty, homelessness, lack of water, refugees, whether it's due to what's happening in political systems, whether it's issues of race equality, whether it's deforestation, whether it's climate change, whatever it may be, spirituality today requires us to act. We've shared already so much about Saint Francis of Assisi speaking of, make me an instrument. Lord Krishna tells us to be a tool in God's hands. When we stand up from our yoga mats, when we stand up from our meditation cushions, we are supposed to stand up full of that union of yoga, full of that connection of meditation, full of that faith and love that we get in our places of worship, and then to act, to serve, to be the channels, the vehicles, the vessels for God's love, for God's truth, for God's healing here on earth. This is not the time to sit this one out. And so in our spiritual experience, in our spiritual path, in our spiritual journey, to find that place in which I charge myself, as Radhanath Swamiji said so beautifully, I charge myself. And then I use that charge to charge others. And then I come back and I charge myself. And then I use that charge. Because we are called upon people of spirit, people connected to spirit, people connected to consciousness, people connected to compassion. We must stand up. We must act. We must allow that flow of the divine to flow through us into action in the world. The ideal village is not going to be created by us saying, let me know when the world has become peaceful and then I'll come out of my cocoon. It's going to become ideal by each of us standing up and creating that, co-creating that ideal world together. So thank you so much for this just exquisite experience and opportunity to be together in such love and to share with you this evening and to be back at Stanford after 25 plus years.
Wonderful. So great to be with each of you. We're going to have a wrap up for day 3. I'm sure on the website will be the ability for individuals to connect with each of you if they have further questions about your own work. And thank you so much to our panelists, the organizers, and thank each of you who are listening for being with us today. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Swamiji, a pleasure.
We all feel so blessed and so suffused with this love that all of you have shared. And all the audience comments that have come so positive and so inspired by your message, your oneness. And truly, this has been the epitome of all that we had aspired for. 4 or 5 years ago, we were brainstorming, Sundar and I, and we said, we just sort of shared amongst ourselves that when the power of love supersedes the love of power, that moment, the world will become an ideal village. And this truly is a giant step in that direction. Thank you all. What a wonderful experience you have given us.
Yes, and when we had the in-person conferences, the limitation was distance and time. Now, if there's one thing that's come out of COVID, we're all connecting. and creating this satsang. So we're so grateful to all of you for making the time, and we will always cherish the recordings of this. I think we've seen many comments people would like to retain. So it's been an amazing morning. And Dr. James Doty, thank you so much for managing the whole session so beautifully. And we will continue on the journey of the ideal village.
And again, thank you all.
Thank you. The outcome, what we want to achieve, is to try and create a think tank of people from Stanford, from outside Stanford, from India, from all over the world. We join together and practically, start moving towards this goal of every village becoming an ideal village. And so I will reach out to all of you, to our speakers, to our audience. Sundar and I will reach out, and we will all want you to join in this journey towards the ocean of love. A drop of water that fell from the clouds cannot make it back to the ocean by itself. All the drops of water must join together, and together we will all reach that ocean of love. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we were going to do a little takeaway, but I think we're totally fulfilled from the morning. I don't think we can add anything more to that. The pot is full and overflowing with love. So we will conclude the conference here, the webinar. And I know we still have 120 people or so, 100 plus people. And let's please connect. There's a Gmail ID for the conference. There's a website. We will publish all of this in due course in the right channels on YouTube, so it's accessible to the globe, really, because this message needs to be heard by all those who are not in the conference. Extremely important for that. And then maybe we'll have another dialogue in 6 months or so to see where we are and continue this. The important thing is the continuity. It should not be this one-time satsang. I think it's wonderful. So,
all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
God bless. Thank you.